My name is Oliver Gottschalk, professor at the HEC School of Management in Paris, and I'm here at the SuperReturn CFO COO Forum in Amsterdam 2015. It's my great pleasure to be interviewing Pamela Hendrickson from the Riverside company on a variety of key aspects and challenges of the CFO COO role in a private equity house. Pam, thank you so much for being here today. You manage a fairly large and complex operation at the Riverside company, not only in terms of the assets under management, but also a multitude of fund vehicles. And certainly one of the key challenges is the possible confrontation and friction between the deal team, the more deal-oriented part of the organization, and then everything else. How would you describe the greatest challenges in this role, and how do you fit there in your particular role in the intersect between those two parts?
You know, I think as the industry becomes more institutional, it becomes a challenge because you do want to maintain the entrepreneurial spirit that has made private equity great. So I think in order to ensure that we're being compliant with the various regulations around the world, I think there are three things you have to do. The first is, I think you have to create tools that make it easy for people to comply. So for example, we have, through our expense processing system, you can take a picture of a receipt with your iPhone, just write on it what it is, and it'll go straight into your folder. And so when an admin is processing it, she knows exactly where to allocate those expenses because you've written it down. And our deal team doesn't really have to think about it. It took them 1 minute to take the picture, and to write down what it was they were doing at that moment. I think the second thing is to involve deal teams in the creation of process. So last year, for example, we created an EBITDA adjustment policy for the firm just to make sure that we were consistently handling those adjustments around the world. Each one of our fund strategies nominated a person to be on the EBITDA adjustment committee, and so they actually did it. They sort of put it together themselves. And where there were disagreements, they were disagreeing among the deal teams, and so that was really, really helpful. And then I think the final thing is obviously compensation is important. So I think it's important that, and I do this. I'm involved in the global talent reviews, so I'm able to say, this person probably doesn't deserve the same amount of bonus that someone else does because they just, their funds flows are always wrong, and I'm constantly having to chase them for getting their AML training done, etc. So I think that's how we really managed it.
If you look back at those challenges, what were, if you could share some of those, what were pain points? What do you think the toughest thing to do? Also coming from an industry where I think we can take for granted that, let's say, the typical level of self-confidence is usually located with the rainmakers and the deal teams.
Right. Well, I think the hardest thing is telling people they can't do something that they always used to be able to do. And so now, a good example is co-invest, right? Yep. Years ago, on co-invest, you could pretty much give it to whoever you wanted. In the current regulatory regime, you have to have really strict policies about who it goes to. And so that can mean that, you really are restricted in terms of how you're going to offer your co-invest and how quickly you can get it out the door. So I think, it's a challenge to tell people who are used to doing something one way that now they have to do it a different way.
In designing the roles of the senior leadership, what are things you had in mind to make sure that the deal team functions, the deal team gets all the support that they need, but at the same time there's sufficient senior ownership of these regulations, these policies, to make sure they are actually followed through, and people don't fall in the habit of just doing things the way they used to do them, because and recognize the need to change?
Well, so I think, first of all, I think the COO or the CFO or whomever is sort of in charge of all that has to sit at the top of the firm. I mean, has to be involved with the founders, or in our case, the CEOs, in terms of developing policy and being able to enforce policy. We sort of have the ultimate stick because no money can go out the door unless my team says okay. And so, they have the ability in their funds flows and checklists to say, this isn't done. This is not done right. And so I'm sorry that you want to fund this deal tomorrow, but you're not going to. And no deal team ever wants to be in that position. So they're constantly going to be talking to the operational guys to ensure that they're making progress along those lines. But I do think in my very senior positions, I do also want people who understand what our business is. I don't want, and I don't mean to be insulting, I don't want bureaucrats who are going to just say no because that's what the rule says. I really want people who will do what that old Hewlett-Packard commercial said, what if? So let's figure out a way to get this done in a manner that works with our regulatory regimes around the world.
Very interesting. In addition to the points you mentioned already, I mean, if you look at the many private equity firms who are not yet of the size of Riverside, maybe it never will be of that size, but then the process of scaling up, and they're facing the challenge of actually building up these processes, creating those functions. In addition to what you just said, are there other things you would like to share, any pieces of advice that you would like to give to them?
So I think technology is your friend, and you obviously yourself are a big proponent of technology. So I do think there's been a tendency to throw people at things, and often that isn't the right solution. Often you're going to get a faster, more efficient, more accurate way of scaling by using different types of technology for different things, whether it's your deal origination system or the notes you keep for fundraising, or of course your financial reporting.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.